Galaxy sees this. Their fear will vanish. The Dominion alone rules the stars. But he did not understand what he had done. He did not understand that in his arrogance, he had crossed the one line the galaxy dared not touch. The survivors, those few who had hidden in cellars, caves, and forests, managed to send a broken signal, a fragment of a call for help. It was weak, almost lost in the noise of space, but it carried the weight of their pain. It reached other human colonies. It reached Earth. The message was simple, raw, filled with static and tears. They are killing us. Please, help. Galaxy heard it too, and with that single cry, a shiver passed through every world, every council, every fleet. They knew what it meant. The rule had been broken. In dark taverns, smugglers stopped speaking and glanced at one another in silence. In marketplaces, merchants packed up their stalls, whispering to each other that the Korath had sealed their fate. In the halls of governments, leaders felt a cold dread, for they all knew what would follow. The Korath thought they had proven humans weak, but the rest of the galaxy knew the truth. The humans had been provoked, and when provoked, they never answered with half measures. They answered with fire and justice so fierce it burned itself into history. As the ruins of the colony still smoldered, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting. The Korath commander laughed at his easy victory, blind to the HFY storm he had unleashed. But others far away whispered the words once more, words heavy with warning, words older than memory. Humans are off limits, for they never harm the innocent, but when you harm them, nothing can save you. For a while after the attack, there was silence from Earth. The galaxy waited, whispering among itself. Some thought perhaps the humans would grieve quietly, licking their wounds in the shadows. Others believed the Korath had finally shattered the legend, proving the stories of humanity's wrath were only myths. But those who truly understood humans, they did not speak. They simply waited. Hearts, heavy with dread, they knew what always followed. And then, it began. The silence of space trembled as human fleets emerged from the darkness. They did not arrive in chaotic bursts like pirates. They came in perfect formation, each vessel a shadow of steel and purpose. There were not countless numbers of them. Humanity did not need countless numbers. Where other empires sent waves of ships like an ocean crashing on stone, humans sent blades, sharp, precise, unstoppable. The first Korath patrols laughed when they saw the human fleet. So few, they mocked. They come to die. But when the battle started, the laughter died with them. Human ships did not waste a single shot. Each beam, each missile, each strike landed with frightening accuracy. Korath warships, massive and bristling with weapons, fell one by one, their hulls shattering like glass. Human vessels moved like hunters, weaving through enemy fire, silent and merciless. And yet, this was what chilled the galaxy most. The humans aimed only at the guilty. Korath warships exploded, but civilian freighters were left untouched. Korath outposts used as military bases were reduced to dust, but nearby villages remained standing unharmed. It was not random destruction. It was justice sharpened to a blade. On the ground, where Korath soldiers occupied human towns, human marines descended in dropships. They moved quickly, silently, with grim faces and steady hands. The soldiers fought with fury, yet when they reached the terrified alien civilians, innocents forced to live under the Korath, they laid down food, water, and medicine instead of fire. In one ruined colony, Captain Alara herself stood among survivors. Her armor was scarred, her rifle heavy at her side, but her voice was calm as she knelt before a trembling alien child who was not even human. She gave the child her water flask, speaking softly. "You are safe now. We protect the innocent." The survivors, both human and alien, looked at her with disbelief. They had expected vengeance to consume everything, to wipe them away along with the enemy. But instead they saw mercy. Mercy carried in the hands of warriors who had every reason to burn the galaxy in rage. Above, the Korath commanders were in panic. They had thought humans would fight like beasts lashing out blindly. Instead, they fought like storm and flame combined, precise, unyielding, terrifying in their control. A Korath officer screamed on the comms as his fleet collapsed. Around him, they don't fight like others. They don't waste. Every strike is perfect, every strike is doom. And still the humans did not speak. No grand speeches, no taunts, no boasts. Only silence as they dismantled the Dominion fleet piece by piece. The galaxy watched through secret transmissions, horrified and awed. They saw the truth with their own eyes. The legends had not been lies. If anything, the stories had been gentle compared to reality. Because when humanity moved, they moved with a fury no empire could match. Yet their fury was never blind. It was bound by a vow older than their ships, older than their colonies. They would not harm the innocent. They never had. They never would. And so the galaxy understood. The Korath had not just attacked a colony. They had awakened something far greater. They had awakened the storm of justice that slept within humankind. The ruins of the human colony still smoked when the dropships touched down. The air carried the bitter smell of ash, and the ground was littered with shattered stone and twisted steel. Families huddled together in silence, their faces marked by fear, grief, and exhaustion. Among them were not only humans, but also alien settlers, friends, traders, and wanderers who had chosen to live alongside humanity. From the gray skies, the human Marines descended. Their armor was scarred from battle, their rifles ready, yet their movements were steady and calm. They did not arrive as conquerors. They arrived as protectors. At the front of the squad was Captain Alara, her helmet tucked under her arm. Her eyes were sharp, but her voice was soft when she spoke. "It's over now," she said, kneeling beside a frightened family hiding in the ruins. "No one will harm you again." A small alien child clung to her mother's arm, trembling. The mother whispered, "Will you kill us too? We are not human, we were only living here." Ilara's gaze softened. She offered her flask of water to the child and shook her head. "No, you are innocent, and we never harm the innocent." Tears rolled down the mother's face as she took the flask with shaking hands. For the first time since the attack, hope flickered in their eyes. All across the colony, the story was the same. Human soldiers spread out, bringing food, medicine, and blankets to those who had survived. They carried the wounded on their backs, patched broken shelters, and buried the dead with quiet respect. Everywhere they went, they left a mark not of fire, but of mercy, and yet above them, in orbit, the war continued. Human ships still clashed with Korath fleets, striking with precision. One by one, enemy warships fell, their wreckage scattered across the stars. But not a single innocent vessel was harmed. The galaxy watched. Transmissions carried images of human soldiers giving bread to starving children, of medics treating alien survivors with the same care as their own, of soldiers lifting rubble not to build fortresses but to free the trapped. The message was clear. Humanity was terrifying in war, but their true strength was in their restraint. On the ground, an old settler who had once doubted the humans watched in silence as Marines repaired the water lines. His voice trembled when he finally spoke to a nearby officer. "Why do you do this? Why not take vengeance on all of us? Why not burn everything, like the Korath would?" The officer looked at him, her face weary from battle yet steady with conviction. "Because vengeance blinds, justice does not. We are here for the guilty, not for those who suffered alongside us. That is our way." The old settler lowered his head, ashamed of his doubts. In that moment, he understood why the galaxy feared humans, yet also why so many admired them. In the ruins of the colony's main hall, survivors gathered as the Marines set up lights and shelters. Some humans wept for their lost families. Some aliens mourned their broken homes. But all felt the same strange comfort. They were safe. Captain Alara stood among them, watching the stars where battles still raged. Her voice carried quietly, but every survivor heard it. They thought we were weak, They thought we were prey, but they do not understand. We fight only when we must, and when we fight, it is never against the innocent. Across the galaxy, these images spread like wildfire. Smugglers, traders, and rulers alike saw the truth with their own eyes. The old whispers were not lies. They were the heart of humanity's code. Humans never harm the innocent. And now the galaxy knew it more clearly than ever before. The Korath Dominion was not used to fear. For centuries they had conquered without challenge, crushing weaker civilizations beneath their fleets. But now, the fear they once spread had turned against them. Humanity had moved, and nothing could stop it. Korath commanders ordered more fleets into battle. Armadas of heavy cruisers and dreadnoughts poured into the stars, their banners blazing with arrogance. They expected the humans to falter under sheer numbers. But each time, the result was the same. The fleets never returned. Human warships tore through them with cold precision. They did not waste fire. They did not boast. They simply destroyed piece by piece, until only silence remained. Every act of defiance inspired the Yllari. In basements and ruins, frightened families began to believe again. For the first time in weeks, songs of hope rose in the dark corners of Illavor. Children painted stars on the walls of shelters, whispering that the sky was no longer an enemy but a shield. Still, the cost was high. Human soldiers fell. Some never rose again. But even in death, their sacrifice spoke louder than any word. Yllari civilians carried the wounded, comforted the dying, and promised never to forget. And the Krath, once so confident, began to hesitate. Their commanders shouted for them to advance, but their troops slowed. They had faced rebels, pirates, and armies before. They had never faced this, an enemy that fought not for conquest, not for glory, but for strangers who had called out for help. The ground war became a symbol. Every street, every ruined district, was proof that humanity would not turn away, and in the heart of Illavor, where the Yllari elders gathered, Elder Senari wept as she heard the distant roar of human rifles. They came, she whispered to the others. Against the Krath, against the fear of the galaxy, they came. The Yllari, once doomed, now had protectors. And though the battle was far from over, one truth became clear across every burning street of Illavor. When humanity set foot on the ground, even the most merciless invaders had reason to tremble. The war on Illavor dragged on for days. The skies were filled with smoke, the ground scarred by fire and ash. Yet something had changed, something the Krath had never known before. They were losing. At first, they could not believe it. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries through fear alone. Entire civilizations had bowed at the mere sight of their fleet. But here, against the humans, fear no longer worked. Humanity pushed forward step by step. Their fleets in orbit broke every counterattack. Their soldiers on the ground reclaimed districts the Krath thought secure. Even when human soldiers fell, their comrades carried on with the same unshakable resolve. It was as if defeat simply did not exist in their minds. One Krath commander, a veteran of 100 campaigns, snarled in frustration as another report came in. Our line is broken in the east. The humans advance without rest. His second in command trembled. We've thrown everything at them, Lord. They do not stop. They do not break. The commander slammed his fist on the console. Then they are not soldiers. They are monsters. But the truth was far more terrifying. The humans were not monsters. They were something worse for the Krath. They were determined. On the ground, the battles grew fiercer. In the ruined capital of Terra, humans and Yllari fought side by side. The Yllari had no weapons of war, but they carried food, tended wounds, and guided civilians to safety. They saw humans bleed for them, and in return, they found their own courage. A young Yllari boy, barely old enough to stand, carried water through the rubble to thirsty soldiers. A girl stitched wounds with trembling hands, whispering words of comfort. In their eyes, the humans were no longer strangers. They were guardians. The Krath saw this growing bond and panicked. Fear was their weapon. Division was their strength. But here their enemies united instead of crumbling. In orbit, the turning point finally came. The largest Krath fleet yet arrived, darkening the skies with hundreds of warships. Their commander announced with booming pride, "We will crush these humans and burn this world to ash." The Yalari cried out in terror, watching the endless wave of metal descend. Even some human soldiers looked up with grim faces, knowing the scale of what awaited them. But Admiral Rael stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn and spoke calmly to his fleet. "They think we will break," he said, his voice steady. "They think we will surrender. But humanity has never surrendered. Not in the darkest nights, not against the greatest odds. And we will not start today. Hold the line. Make them remember who we are." The order was given. The humans charged. The battle that followed was like no other. The void itself seemed to tremble as thousands of weapons fired at once. The Krath unleashed their fury, but the humans answered with defiance. Damaged ships refused to fall back, holding their ground until their last breath. Smaller vessels darted through the chaos, striking at weak points. Carriers released wave after wave of fighters, swarming the enemy like fireflies in a storm. One by one, the mighty Krath warships fell. The sky became littered with burning wreckage, their once invincible fleet torn apart piece by piece. From the ground, the Yalari saw the explosions above and realized something incredible. The humans were not just fighting back, they were winning. Cheer rose across the ruined cities, a sound so loud it carried even over the thunder of war. Yalari voices joined with human voices, crying out together in one chorus. Hope, once dead, was alive again. The Krath began to retreat. Their commanders, once proud, now shouted desperate orders. The soldiers who had marched so confidently now hesitated, stumbling back before the relentless human advance. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy's most feared conquerors were afraid, and so the tide turned. The Yalari looked at the humans with awe. These strange newcomers had faced the terror of the Dominion and had not only survived, but had driven them back. In the silence after another Krath flagship exploded in the heavens, Elder Sonari whispered the truth that everyone now felt in their hearts. The galaxy was wrong to fear them. Humanity is not dangerous because they destroy. Humanity is dangerous because they refuse to let others fall. And with that, the legend of the humans spread beyond Ilivor, across the stars into the hearts of all who had once thought them reckless. The Krath had been stopped. The tide had turned. But the war was not yet finished. The war for Ilivor ended, not with a single great explosion, but with silence. The Krath Dominion, humiliated and broken, finally withdrew. Their mighty fleets, once thought unstoppable, retreated into the darkness of space. Their armies on the ground, scattered and leaderless, abandoned their posts and fled. For the first time in centuries, the predators of the galaxy had been forced to run. The Yalari stood among the ruins of their world in disbelief. Their once shining cities were scarred, their monuments shattered, their people weary and wounded, yet they were alive. Against all reason, against all fear, they still breathed. And it was because of the humans. Human ships still orbited above, battered but unyielding. Some bore gaping wounds in their hulls, others floated half-crippled, but they remained. They had not left even after victory. On the ground, human soldiers still patrolled the streets, helping Yalari families from the rubble, carrying supplies, treating the injured. To the Yalari, they seemed both terrifying and noble, dark-armored giants who had walked through fire to shield them. Elder Sonari, her body frail, but her spirit, unbroken, walked through the ruined square of Terra where survivors had gathered. A human commander awaited her, his armor scratched and scarred, his helmet tucked under one arm. His face was weary, lined with battle, but his eyes were steady. She bowed deeply, the gesture of utmost respect in her people's culture. Around her, the other Yalari followed, bending low, their voices trembling with gratitude. "You saved us," Sonari said softly, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We called into the void with nothing but fear and despair, and you came. Why would you, the most dangerous race in the stars, risk everything for us?" the human commander's expression did not change, but when he spoke, his voice was firm and clear, because no one else would. And that is enough for us. The Yalari wept openly. Children clung to their parents. Elders pressed their hands together in prayer. For them, the words were not just an answer, they were a promise that humanity was different, that humanity was more than the galaxy had whispered in fear. News of the battle spread quickly. Across the galaxy, whispers turned into shouts. The humans had fought the Dominion and won. They had done what no other race had dared. In the halls of the Zalorian Assembly, lawmakers who once laughed at the plea now sat in silence, their faces pale. On Veroth, the Merchant Council trembled, realizing that profit had blinded them while a so-called reckless species had saved a world. Even the Torgan hegemony, proud warriors who mocked weakness, admitted in hushed tones that humanity had done what they could not. A new story spread across the stars. The tale of Ilivor, the desperate cry for help, and the humans who had answered. The Krath Dominion would never forget their defeat. They would return one day, stronger and angrier, but from now on they would know that the galaxy was no longer theirs to rule without challenge. Humanity had shown them that even the most powerful empire could bleed. On Ilivor, the rebuilding began. Yalari children painted human soldiers in their art, not as conquerors, but as guardians of light standing against the storm. Songs were sung of the night the stars changed when fire fell from the heavens, not to destroy but to protect. As the humans prepared to leave, Elder Sonari raised her hand to the skies and whispered, "You are dangerous. Yes, but not because you destroy. You are dangerous because you protect, and that makes all the difference." The human fleet departed, engines burning bright as they slipped back into the endless dark, but their presence remained, carved into the hearts of the Yalari and etched into the history of the galaxy. A desperate plea for help had once echoed into the void, and humanity, the most dangerous of all, had answered. It was the end of one battle, but it was also the beginning of a Leje. Korath scientists tried to unleash new weapons, mass drivers that could shatter moons, plasma storms that could burn whole fleets. But before these weapons could even fire, humans struck, dismantling them as if they already knew every secret. No, strategy worked. No trap succeeded. The humans were always 3 steps ahead, striking not with rage but with frightening clarity. Soon, whispers spread across the galaxy. The humans were heading for the Korath homeworld. The Dominion's leaders, gathered in their great citadel, trembling beneath the weight of their own arrogance. Their once proud empire now stood exposed, and for the first time in memory, they wondered if their end had come. On the day the human fleet arrived, the skies above the Korath world darkened. Thousands watched in terror as sleek human warships filled orbit, silent and unmoving like judges waiting to deliver a sentence. The galaxy held its breath. Everyone expected fire to rain down, cities to be erased, and oceans to boil. Many believed the humans would finally unleash the vengeance they had been holding back, wiping the Dominion from existence. But that was not humanity's way. The attack came swiftly, but with terrifying precision. Human weapons struck only one target: the Korath High Command. The Grand Citadel, where the warlords who had ordered the massacre sat in their golden thrones, shook under the storm of human fire. Towers crumbled, shields failed. The proud fortress that had stood for centuries collapsed into dust. When the smoke cleared, the leaders were gone. And yet, beyond the ruins of the citadel, the rest of the world remained untouched. Cities still stood. Villages were unscarred. Innocent lives continued, spared from destruction. The message was clear: humanity had not come to destroy a people. They had come to deliver justice. Across the galaxy, the moment spread in waves of shock. Pirates, warlords, and kings alike watched as humans broadcast a single transmission from their fleet, carried to every corner of space. The voice was steady, calm, and filled with unshakable weight. This is justice, not revenge. The guilty have been judged. The innocent remain. We do not harm the innocent. The words echoed in every chamber, every market, every battlefield. They rang like iron in the hearts of those who had once mocked the old warnings. The legend was no longer just a story, it was truth carved into the stars. For the Korath people, life changed forever. No longer did their warlords speak with arrogance. No longer did they believe themselves untouchable. They bowed their heads in shame, for their leaders had brought ruin upon them, and the humans had shown mercy where none was deserved. For the rest of the galaxy, the rule became unbreakable law. Humans are off limits, not because of treaties, not because of fear alone, but because everyone now understood the weight of those words. Humanity was both mercy and wrath. They destroyed the guilty, but protected the innocent, even if it meant sparing those who had once been enemies. And so, the galaxy trembled, not just from fear, but from awe. The galaxy was forever changed after the fall of the Korath High Command. The once proud dominion was broken, not by fire raining on their civilians, but by the sharp edge of justice that cut only the guilty. No one had expected such restraint. No one had believed such power could be so carefully controlled. And yet, humanity had shown it. From the richest trading hubs to the poorest mining colonies, a single phrase spread like wildfire, carried in whispers and in official decrees alike. Humans are off limits. It was no longer just a warning. It had become a law of survival. Even the most reckless pirates, even the greediest warlords, repeated it to themselves when greed tempted them. To touch a human world was to invite destruction. But what truly unsettled the galaxy was not fear alone. It was the example humanity had set. In the weeks after the reckoning, messages poured into human space. Some were words of gratitude, from colonies and species who had been spared when humanity might have destroyed them alongside the Korath. Others were offers of alliance, trade, and friendship. Many empires began to question their own ways. If humanity, with all its power, chose mercy over conquest, then what excuse did the rest of them have for endless war? For centuries, the galaxy had believed kindness was weakness, but the humans had proven the opposite. Their mercy did not make them weak. It made them unbreakable. On Earth, the leaders of humanity did not celebrate victory with parades or crowns. They mourned the lost colony. They rebuilt what had been broken. Ships carried supplies, workers, and healers to the ruined settlements, and slowly life returned. Captain Alara stood once more among the survivors she had protected. Where ruins had once smoked, new homes rose. Where grief had once drowned the people, laughter began to return. She watched children, both human and alien, play together under the rebuilt roofs. And for a moment, she allowed herself a small smile. "We did not fight for glory," she said softly to her officers. "We fought so they could live. That is enough." Beyond Earth, the galaxy's rulers gathered in secret councils once more. But this time their voices were filled not with arguments of pride, but with caution. One counselor whispered, "They could have destroyed the Korath completely, yet they did not." Another answered, "That is why they are feared, and why they are respected." Even Varkesh, the reptilian warlord who had once demanded humanity be crushed, could no longer meet the eyes of his peers. He had seen the truth. Humanity had power beyond reckoning, yet chose not to wield it for conquest. Against such a code, even his pride faltered. The galaxy changed slowly, but it changed nonetheless. Some empires began sparing civilians during wars. Some warlords hesitated before attacking the weak, not out of kindness of their own, but because the human example lingered in their minds like a shadow. And whenever doubt rose, whenever ambition whispered, one phrase silenced it. Humans never harm the innocent. In time, the story of the Korath became legend, told in marketplaces, on starships, and in homes. Children of many species grew up hearing it, their eyes wide with awe. They learned not just to fear humanity, but to respect them, to see in them a strange light the galaxy had long forgotten, because humans did not seek to rule the stars with chains. They sought to protect them with justice, and so the galaxy trembled, not from endless war, but from the weight of a new truth. Humanity had not set out to lead. Yet their actions had reshaped the stars. Their vow had become law. Their mercy had become a weapon stronger than any fleet. The galaxy would never forget. Humans are off limits, for they never harm the innocent.